Hey, Bigpod.
What?
I've got a cat. She's purring.
I noticed.
You can hear her on the microphone right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cue the show. Okay. Cat has been disposed of, and hopefully she doesn't destroy everything. Okay. Showtime. Hey guys, welcome to No Tucks Allowed. I'm your host, Josh, and today I've brought with me this guy named Bigpod. While, there's a cat running around in the background, so she seems a little bit too excited. Sorry about the background noise. We'll do our best that we can to get it filtered out. But how's it going today, Bigpod?
He's doing great.
Well, it sounds a lot better than me because, I've got cats running around the house and a kitten with a massive case of the zoomies. So, I went through a bit of an adventure today. Well, not today, but like this week. Because,
Really?
I was doing an OpenSUSE challenge. Because, Matt's doing like these challenges. I think it's about time that I did a challenge. So I was going to run OpenSUSE and see if I can last on OpenSUSE for at least 3 months. Guess how long it lasted me?
Based on how you're wording things, I don't think you lasted all that long.
No, I think that OpenSUSE installation, technically it lasted me more than a week. It was installed on the computer for more than a week. But realistically, I only used my computer for 3 days. So,
Great.
The first day was installation and setup. The second day was recording last episode. And then the third day was my Sunday morning prep for my Dungeons & Dragons campaign, of which we have converted from playing over the computer to playing in person again, which means I get to have all my wonderful paper notes. And so I go to type up all my notes and everything, and I go to print them out because when I play this game, I prefer to play completely analog rather than with the tablets and the computers and all that, because it's just what I prefer. Just get me away from the screens, please. But anyways, I go to print, and the only printer option was a PDF. I'm like, okay, so we're missing a driver package. Okay, so we go searching the OpenSUSE repositories for like the different cups packages that they offer. And I can't quite figure out which one supports my printer. So it's a Xerox printer, so I know that Xerox also does provide Linux drivers for the majority of their printers, if not all of them. So I go over there, and I'm able to find the PPD file for my printer. So I install it, and then I restart Cups. And Cups still can't find my printer. I'm like, okay, this is a network printer, so let's do the proper thing, and hit the power button on my network printer and see if it's turned on. Because I've fallen down that rabbit hole before.
Yeah.
It was turned on. I'm like, okay, let's check the network connection. The switch that it plugs into still has power, which means that's connected to the PoE switch. I'm like, okay, so this is an OpenSUSE issue still. So I go still looking through I eventually give up, and I basically just install Cups everything. If the package had Cups in its name, I installed it. Because it's OpenSUSE, they have the zipper integrates with ButterFS snapshots quite nicely in OpenSUSE. So it's like, if I wind up breaking things, I can just roll back with the snapshots and fix it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really break anything, but I also didn't fix my printer.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so, and then I sit there, I look at the time, I've got less than 3 hours to get this settled. I'm like, okay, at this point, it's time that we actually, use the distro that actually got this working. So, anyways, when I eventually came to the conclusion that I've got less than 3 hours, and it takes me an hour to get to the place where we actually play this game. So I've got realistically 2 hours to get this working. Okay, so let's get tired. Let's quit attempting to fix OpenSUSE, because it's time that we actually got something done. So I went to Ubuntu.com, I downloaded Ubuntu, I installed Ubuntu, reloaded the backup, and used Ubuntu to print, and then I shut the computer back off. Because by then it was, time to actually take off for the session. And then when I came back, I took a look at Ubuntu, just do I really want to use Ubuntu? No. So I reinstalled Gentoo. So that's basically been my entire week, is just installing and configuring Gentoo, which is probably going to be going on for another 2 weeks, and then we'll be settled in for Gentoo, assuming that this installation of Gentoo doesn't wind up nuking itself like usual.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we've had some news come out, and for you viewers, you longtime viewers, you know that we're secretly a security podcast, and there is a security update, but we'll get to that one last, because I want to talk about wine. Now, wine stands for, quite literally, wine is not an emulator. So
Yes.
if you look at
technically it is.
Technically it is, but it's not. Or at least
I
they say that's
don't
not.
care what they say, but
Yeah.
but by all definitions, it is an emulator.
Yeah. So, anyways, it releases version 10, and it's enabling Wayland by default now.
Yeah.
Assuming that, you're in a Wayland environment. So, anyways, with them enabling Wayland, I'm sitting here right at the start of the show, in the pre-show, debating if I want to see how long it takes me to compile wine, which it's going to take a while because Gentoo life. And okay, so we're not going to do that quite yet, but maybe after the show we're going to be testing it out and just see how stable it is, because it's in the Gentoo repository right now. I can install it. It's just tagged under their testing flag because they're being logical about it. But and it also enabled something just for you, Bigpod, because I know you're a big fan of this stuff.
Really?
Yes, Windows ARM, and not just emulating ARM on your x86 system, but if for some reason you're using Wine on an ARM system, you can now emulate Windows x86 too. I think.
Yay.
I don't know. I read the Wine release notes, and I think that's what they're saying. Correct us if I'm wrong. So,
based on my understanding, it actually currently doesn't support anything when it comes to emulation of ARM, but it has all the required interfaces for you to put an external library in and automatically do that with something like FEX emulator, which already implements the right interface when built as ARM64EC. I don't know what that means, but yeah.
Oh, well, it's ARM things with Wine, so that's pretty cool nonetheless, because
yeah.
It's kind of looking like ARM is going to be the future of or our near future of computing devices. So, especially with
it will be.
Well, I think that they're going to continue trending around for a little bit. So, we'll see, because Apple kind of did the thing, and now everybody's got to follow suit.
I don't know.
Yeah, and anyways, Bigpod, here's a warning for you, because I know that you're using like these Fedora derived systems of sorts.
Yeah.
And Fedora almost sent an oopsie, but it turns out that GNOME fixed it just in time for the Fedora Rawhide update. And
Okay.
I've also been seeing like some posts on like support forums, and also Reddit posts and some IRC chatter and some mailing lists about people with broken GNOME sessions where GNOME would just load blank windows effectively. But you still had like the Windows decorations of like the hamburger menu and the close button, because that's realistically all that GNOME gives you.
Yeah.
Now, Bigpod, what is your first thought when you run into something like that?
That some part of rendering engine gone bad, which could be basically anything from loading textures to loading fonts to loading basically anything.
Okay. Well,
it could be also the team part of it gone bad. So basically anything that comes with rendering a window, anything in that pipeline.
Yeah. So, anyways, this showed up. I discovered it as I was investigating through this here. As far as I can tell, that this was first reported by Debian Unstable, but I didn't find it off like my Google searches first. I actually found it off of Arch Linux first, where a user went through it, and he's posting logs. So because the very first request is for logs, because that's typically where you start, because sometimes logs are useful. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, they're checking logs, and people are saying that, hey, there's something sus here, because it looks like there's a cinnamon theme package, but it's not doing that. Maybe it's a GPU issue, right? Because this guy's using an Intel integrated GPU. Well, now there's a guy commenting saying that, hey, I'm on an AMD GPU, things are still working fine for me. Okay, so they get working through, and then eventually a guy comes in and says that, hey, if I just reload the font cache using fc-cache-f-v, everything now works.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
a font rendering issue.
It's a font rendering issue.
Great.
Now, obviously, this is Arch Linux we're talking about, so there's like a discussion going like, hey, let's just do a news post about some manual intervention that needs to be done. Well, apparently there's now a wonderful Arch Linux feature where they're not doing that. They don't want to actively do that anymore. So, hey, that's pretty cool. Thanks, Arch Linux, for actually caring about the user for once.
Yeah.
And eventually, this comes around where like somebody says that Pango, the GNOME font rendering engine, which basically a lot of things use Pango nowadays. Anyways, it's not just GNOME.
Yeah.
Pushed out an update, and the update notes mention issues with the font cache, and it eventually makes it into that Arch Linux discussion. Well, what it turns out is that Pango version 1.56 was preferring a newer application font that was installed on the system, but it would not respect any older version of the font. So, if your font cache was not reloaded and you ran a system update, and you just continue using the system and you launch a new window, that window is going to be blank on GNOME, because fonts are broken.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, this is either A, you need to reload the cache after every update, or B, fix Pango, which is the preferred option?
Well, Pango got fixed with
Yeah.
version 1.56.1, so a point release, and it changed more than a few lines, but not a ton. It was just in the Pango fontmap.c file, Pango ofc-fontmap.c, with 41 lines added and 13 deletions, according to the Git repository. I got this linked in the show notes, by the way. So like you C developers can wrap your head around like this issue and see how they fix it. But anyways, they have now changed font config to prefer application fonts, even if they just so happen to be an older version of what you currently have in the cache.
Yeah.
So Pango now can read its own history. Which, hey, that's
Good.
pretty cool. And they went out and got that fixed. So, honestly, this leads like a precedent towards like the offline updates that I've been seeing like distros shipping more and more of nowadays. I know that Fedora's been doing like these offline updates for a while, and even like the immutable distros like Silverblue and all of them, they technically the proper way to do it is when you run a system update, you're supposed to reboot the computer.
Yes.
Not that you actually have to, but you should.
But you should.
You should.
There are various reasons why you should do that. For one, technically speaking, not everything that it updates will actually load into memory, and when you do the reboot, you actually ensure that it does load into memory.
Or something that's loaded in memory no longer exists on the system. So when the memory goes to get remapped, it can't find a thing anymore. Now everything just crashes to hell because that's what happens sometimes when you have a kernel update come in.
Yes.
So it turns out that Linus Torvalds removed your driver or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's happened before.
But that is actually another reason why Windows requires an update, rather than restart after update or during the update.
Yeah.
The reason for Windows is because their file system works fundamentally different than how it works on Linux. On Windows, a file system that has on a file that has a write on it automatically has a write lock, and no other process can write to that file, which means Windows files cannot be changed in most normal circumstances when the system is booted.
So it's not quite immutable, but sort of immutable?
Yes, it is. Essentially, it is protecting itself by having a write lock on automatic write lock. So remember on Linux when let's say you're updating your system on apt, and there is when you're updating but you wanna you're forget that you're updating and you just write apt install something, and you get that another process is doing something, and you should check this check if this file exists, some app.lock file or something like that. That's how Linux people need to handle file locks, because there is no native capability to do so. So they literally create a new file and then in program check if that file exists. But you can do it. You can still remove that file no matter what is happening on the system. Windows takes it to another level and just essentially locks the file to the process it is writing to the file.
Okay. Well, that it's starting to sound like that's not like the worst idea. But sometimes I don't want to have to deal with like that forced update when I'm trying to get something more proper done. And I've hit that delay button enough times on Windows where it's just like, nope, we're gonna do this now. Because it still does that. But, maybe when Windows is prompting you every 12 hours to if you want to install the update, maybe you should eventually, install the update.
Yes, you should probably install the update sooner or later anyway.
Yep.
But then again, I'm also the person who ran for a longest time Windows that was year old, and that was Windows 11. So I don't know what happened, but it never prompted me or automatically updated, and system was online like 24/7.
That is interesting. So, speaking of updates, because we just talked about the forced updates, you ready for some dystopian future, Bigpod?
I'm not ready, but I have a feeling we're going to that anyway.
Yeah. Now, this is a dystopian future from like the Free Software Foundation perspective, first of all, or your anti-Apple kind of argument area. So, and this comes from the 3D printing space, which I know, Bigpod, you're a big fan of 3D printers. You totally have one in your closet.
Definitely.
Yeah. I used to have 3D printers, but then I sold them when I sold my steaks to get out of plastics. But hey, I did love my 3D printers. They were all Prusa's. They were not, however, Bambu Labs, of which is the subject of today's discussion. So, if you haven't heard and you're into 3D printing, well, surprise, and I'm also surprised that you didn't hear about this. But anyways, Bambu Labs is a fairly prominent manufacturer in the 3D printing space nowadays. They've been really pushing the YouTube advertisements, and overall, they're pretty solid products. Because the biggest hassle that people used to have with 3D printing is just the setup of the printer itself. Lighted, the majority of them are a lot better nowadays. But the big claim to fame that Bambu Labs had is that you can buy the printer, open it out of the box, plug it in, load an STL file into it, and hit go. And it just figured itself out after that. Which, that out of the box solution was a game changer in the 3D printing space, because now that meant that your more normal people could buy this.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that was a couple years ago. And since then they've added remote access to your 3D printer, so they implemented a camera into some of their models that you can access when you're not at home. So they started integrating cloud services. They started releasing software that you can use with the 3D printer. And Bigpod, do you already see where I'm going here?
Yeah, I think
You think so? Well,
yeah.
They came out with more and more of a Bambu ecosystem, and now they're doing the Apple thing, of where now they push out a firmware update to their number one 3D printer, the X1, as they call it, and as well as the A1. So two different models of 3D printers. Basically, they're two most popular models. That was advertised as initially as a security update. And what this security update says is that now any third-party software has to be authorized by Bambu Labs in order to work with this printer.
Okay. Yes. Security.
Yeah. Security. Now.
And, okay, so for all of you, technically speaking, that is security, because, well, if you buy their thing, you're trusting them, but you might not be trusting someone else, but you're using their software, so on, so on, so on. Technically speaking, yes, security. Practically speaking, it is, let's not go into it, but it's a horrible mess that is unhealthy for any industry.
I mean, theoretically, they could argue that, you might use some random third-party software that you downloaded off the internet and just random binary package to, load up. So you load up your 3D model into it, you plug it into your fancy Bambu Lab printer, and now all of a sudden, hackers took over your printer. Now your printer's mining cryptocurrencies for you because,
Yes.
that's a thing that happens.
It's essentially the same argument why Secure Boot exists.
Yep. Now, anyways, they went out, they pushed out this update that presented that, and it turns out that with 3D printers you have this thing called a slicer program. That's the thing that takes your 3D model, slices it up into all the individual layers that the printer would actually print. Well, turns out that there's a lot of people that.
Now I understand why I keep hearing about Prusa Slicer.
Yes. Well, it turns out that Prusa is pretty popular because, Prusa Slicer supports a lot of different 3D printers, not just the Prusa models.
Yes.
And there's another one called Orca Slicer as well, which has been like the community choice slicer for these Bambu printers. And now, if you don't understand what I mean by community choice, I'm talking about like if you go to YouTube and you watch 3D printing content, that's the one that people tell you to install. Like if you're into self-hosting, it's like all the people that try to push like Proxmox on you or as like your home lab OS. Like it's Proxmox or nothing. Or, if you're using Docker, your Portainer and stuff like that. That's what I mean. And the community did not take this very well. Because it has been blowing up everywhere in the tech news feeds. Like I opened up my RSS feed reader and I ran, the update for it to fetch all the feeds, and every single news outlet that I pay attention to, except for like the private blogs, had an article on this. And like,
wow.
Okay, this is a pretty big deal. And Bambu has not gone back on it quite yet. But if you ever wanted to know, it turns out that the private key that Bambu Labs ships with their software to authorize it has already been leaked.
Great.
So, anyways, it turns out that, yes, you probably should still be buying the Prusa printer. I'm sorry, guys. I know we had a lot of fun with the Bambu Labs printer, but it turns out that Prusa is still, like, the good guy in 3D printing.
Yeah.
And I know that of course, you can still buy your Crealities, but honestly, buy the Prusas because, if you care about, like, open source software in general, buy Prusa. Because all their stuff actually is open source.
And that's all I know is Prusa.
Yeah.
So I would probably buy that anyway because that's all I know.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I was a big fan of Prusa to begin with, which is why I initially bought like the Prusa printers. I bought 4 of them, right? I bought like their big one that can print with multiple colors, and I bought like three of their Mark IVs. Fantastic printers. Fantastic. Okay. And of course, Prusa Slicer works on Linux too. Well, but that's a big. That's a rabbit hole to go down that, like, I'm not hugely familiar with, because I'll be honest with you, the only reason I bought the 3D printers was because I hired an employee that actually knew something about 3D printing, and I just let him deal with all those contracts.
Yeah.
But I was impressed by the products nonetheless. Anyways, Bigpod is security time. It's security time. We need to come up with a jingle for this segment. We really do. If you guys have any like sound clips you could send us, please do, because and obviously something that's licensed and usable, preferably.
Yeah.
But PayPal has hit the news, and it's not because of Honey, Bigpod. Not because of Honey.
Oh.
It's something
Right.
else. So, the state of New York here in the U.S. has put a $2 million fine on PayPal. And this was done by New York's Department of Financial Services. So, if you don't know like the impact of this specific department specifically, this is the place that oversees Wall Street.
Yes.
Yeah, effectively, like they're like the Wall Street regulators, because Wall Street happens to
Okay.
be in New York.
In New York, yes.
Yep. So, uh, that's that's probably how this actually hit the news, and they went through an investigation of like a data leak that happened some time ago with PayPal, and we finally got the results of the investigation, and I know we're big fans of like reading these post diagnosis, or like these diagnosis results and and stuff. So I figured that we'd talk about this here a little bit. But anyways, PayPal decided that it was going to make a change to how it handled consumer data relating to IRS Form 1099-K, which is a tax form that we can get here in the U.S. Typically for like contract work, so like 1099 for like your hired contractors and stuff like that. This is effectively like their income tax forms that they would get like at the end of the year, that they would then have to file for like their federal tax forms that get turned in on by April 15th. Otherwise, you get fined. But anyways, they pushed that out. They said that they initially wanted to make it a little bit easier or make it a little bit more reliable, or like get faster downloads. So they probably put this up on like some kind of content management system, or
Or some CDN.
yeah, some kind of CDN or something like that. Well, it turns out that they kind of just did a bad job, because like as soon as they did that, somebody went out, posted somewhere on some forum that I haven't been able to find, mentioning that hey, PayPal you can now get social security numbers off of PayPal, and within like the next week, PayPal saw like a spike in users, and they had to do the alert thing where they send out like the report to the credit agencies that hey, there's we detected like data leaks and stuff like that. So those typical emails that you get every now and then say that hey, you've been pawned, or say we've reset your password for you because this happened. So they went out and did that, and anyways, New York came around, and they did the proper government thing. They went out and they did the fine. It's a little bit of a small fine for like the issue. Bigpod,
Yeah.
we've discussed this a little bit, but what specifically are more or less the details of this?
Well, it appears to be some sort of credential stuffing attack. So essentially, what the attackers did is they probably attacked some form which they used previously known data, like whether it be usernames and password combination, whether it be addresses, whether it be some phone numbers. I'm not sure on which form it was. They just use different combinations of already known data points to access and eventually get data out of the system. So for a practical example of this would be a forum or something gets breached, and data like passwords get leaked publicly. Now, I as an attacker, or some other person as an attacker, goes and grabs that leaked list. In that list, you have combination of username and password. Now I can take that username and password and just try on random websites. Will this work? And if I get many of those lists, I have for this email a whole set of passwords you used. What is the chance you reused any of your passwords? And if you did, I get access to your account. That's what credential stuffing is. Essentially reusing old passwords from other leaks in accounts that haven't yet been breached.
Well, what if I told you that PayPal got a little cheap with this too? Because credit snuffing, pretty avoidable. It with some pretty commonly used tools, like your multi-factor authentication or CAPTCHA.
Yeah.
Which PayPal didn't require either at the time. At the time, they do now. But now, it turns out that when this department went there and did the investigation, they found that PayPal decided that they were not going to pay for a properly trained cybersecurity team. So developers that have experience in cybersecurity, or people that have degrees in cybersecurity or anything like that. And instead, they just went they went cheap and hired people that claimed to just be programmers, and got this system set up
on things that are cybersecurity. So
yeah,
not a good idea. These people could try these credential snuffing attacks and never have to worry about the CAPTCHA prompt. So they could just automate it. Yeah, that's really the thing, that the point of credential stuffing, that you automate it by having load of data about this one user account, and then you might actually go a step further and step into the world of password cracking and just adjust the password a bit, because people go and do let's say their password is test123. They on one side they may go all lowercase, then on another side they will put T that has uppercase. On some website they may put between test and 1 to 3 they may put underscore, and similar things that yes are now password cracking, but you have a guess on already based on already existing data, so you have a context of how to brute force the password from another person.
Yeah,
that you should have no idea about.
And honestly,
do not reuse passwords. Do not reuse passwords.
Don't reuse passwords. If you want to not have to think about passwords, just use a password manager.
Yes.
Ideally, get a trusted device that you set up as a passkey authorization device if you can. So stuff like your YubiKey or something like that.
If you do not want to deal with passwords, many of the services now provide passkey support.
Or at an absolute minimum, just turn on two-factor authentication. Because this could have also avoided this issue.
Been avoided by I need you to enter this random code that you get on your phone, and that's it done. Or on your email, just something to stop the process in its tracks, because that is then a lot harder to do. You need a lot more data to actually get through someone else's email that is the same person, when they may use completely different password. If they reuse a password, that's a problem, but yeah.
Now obviously the fine is probably a little small in my opinion, because PayPal is not exactly a small company. At one point they were the default payment system for the internet, so PayPal is probably not short on cash.
Yeah.
And so I think that $2 million is kind of a slap on the wrist, but I think PayPal hopefully learned their lesson from this, and when they go into another project like this, maybe they spend the additional $2,000 per employee or something like that. However much it charges for a company like PayPal, it's basically just pocket change anyway. So
and maybe it would even require just one developer that is trained in cybersecurity as well.
Yeah, and just put him on the QA team. That way he audits everybody else. And next thing you know, you have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of employees trained in cybersecurity essentials.
Yeah. And that's the catch. You only need essentials, and you're gonna understand the whole thing.
Or at least
Because
have
it's
a basic...
logic that you should have some sort of test before you actually let someone get important data that is on the account.
Yeah.
Like you see with, let's say, Google account, where if you try to access location service for your phone, where is your phone? Find my phone. They require you to re-authenticate.
Yeah, or they at least come up with a pop-up on the phone going like, "Hey, do you want this thing to happen?"
Yeah.
So, yeah. I hope that it gets better. So, anyways, if you would like to support this show, we have a Patreon account that you can go to. We've actually gotten a couple more signups on it, so we're about a quarter of the way towards like paying just the hosting costs for the show.
Well, currently our email is covered.
Yeah, email is covered. Now we actually just need to pay the hosting cost for our website and our content distribution platform that we self-host, because we're savages like that. Bigpod, we're not doing this the easy way, are we?
Nope.
I'm certain that just getting Castapod set up was probably at least an afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
a bit more
than that. But hey, you know what? Hopefully you learn something in that process, because that's why people self-host. They just want to learn a thing, or obviously there's privacy reasons. And the main reason we did it is because we want control over our content. Because technically, even though you might be listening to the show through like your Spotify podcast or your Apple iTunes, or even watching us on YouTube, they don't have full control over our platform. So we hold and publicly post our own source of truth. So by paying on our Patreon, you're continuing to allow us to do that. And plus, it also allows us to get monetization a little bit sooner than what YouTube would allow. And helps us tell that there's people that actually care about our show. And I've seen like our audience retention grow, and our listener base, or at least like the average weekly downloads for our episodes slowly trend upward, slowly, like overall. So I'm excited to see that continue to grow, and eventually, because we're doing this the hard way, we're going to get served like a network transaction fee. It's going to happen. Or we might need to step up the VPS a little bit, so that way it's not just one core, now it's 2 cores or something like that. Because now people are actually coming to our website, and our statically generated website now actually needs to do a little bit more work than just redirect traffic here to there, or there to there, or now it actually has to worry about managing like hundreds of connections or thousands of connections. We're still pretty far out from that, but that day is coming. And by supporting us on Patreon, you're helping us hedge for that eventual possibility. But in the meantime, I don't mind covering the cost of hosting. I'm sure that you don't mind that. I don't have to spend so much money to keep this show and website available. I know that you personally love figuring out how Alma Linux works, right?
Yeah.
And of course, if you would like to share your appreciation of what we do on this show, you can send us an email. Just send us an email to contact@tuxbase.com. That is an email that we don't actually self-host because we're not that savage. Although, I got an email from Linode saying today that the ports are unfiltered for me now because my account's been around just for that long. So,
yay.
We could potentially dabble around with self-hosting an email server, Bigpod. That said, I might just, buy a different domain and, just see if I can DIY it myself or, have you play around with it. Because, heaven forbid, I'm sure that you're kind of curious as to how painful that actually is. But in the meantime, I don't mind paying Amazon to do it for us.
Yeah.
But you can send us an email there. It'll bounce back towards Bigpod and myself, and then you'll see a response from us. Because, we don't get so many emails that we can't respond. But we will respond. And I do see, like, comments posted on, like, these other platforms all the time. We don't primarily look there. We look primarily at the email. Because, we're on all these different services. So it's not like I can go through... And it's not like I actively go to iTunes.com very often, just to check, like, the comments in there. And same thing with, like, the Spotify. And I know the YouTube shows up every now and then because, we actually have to manually upload to YouTube. It doesn't syndicate from us. So we do see the comments there. So you'll see that typically it's Bigpod that responds. Sometimes I'll respond as well. Anyways, you can go there. If you want to find links to all of our stuff, we now have our front page is once again working. That is just tuckspace.com, not show.tuckspace.com, but tuckspace.com. That's our front page. That gives you all the links to like our personal content. My YouTube channel is back up. I relisted all a lot of the videos, not all the videos, because I wanted to kind of focus that channel up a little bit more. So I relisted a lot of my videos. Bigpod, you've also got a YouTube channel. I know that you've been talking about like this video that you've been working on. So I don't know when that's going to be posted, but watch us on YouTube. Or if you want to shout at us directly as well, we have this wonderful thing called Federation IDs, and that's what these things that you're seeing on screen here are. That's what these addresses are. You put these into like your Mastodon or your Planoramas or your Miskeys or whatever you happen to be using, if you know what I'm talking about. But your ActivityPub enabled instances, and you can communicate directly with us on those platforms. This also works with your threads too. You just got to remember that you go into settings and enable Federation. That's all you got to do. Yeah. And you can follow us from there as well. And honestly, I think that's a full show there, Bigpod.
Yeah, I think it is.
Wow. Who knew? So, anyways, we're going to wrap it up for this week. We will see you next week, and maybe we'll see if I can get a Gen 2 installed to last me for longer than a week before I inevitably break it, because this time we're on the testing branch. See ya.
Goodbye.